Kenton is now in sunny San Diego, and I'm in sunny Orlando, Florida. Cool. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I think we can go ahead and jump right in now that we have some people that have completed the poll, and let's go to it. So welcome everyone, and thanks for joining today's session using Claude to diagnose Amazon ad performance. I'm Rolando Galeana, Marketing Manager at Intentwise, and I'll be your host today. I'm excited to introduce today's speaker, Kenton Snyder, Product Manager at Intentwise. Kenton will be walking us through how Amazon brands and agencies can use Claude to diagnose performance changes, identify anomalies, and then cover what actions to take next. So Kenton will cover practical examples around spotting performance changes, reviewing campaign issues, identifying, as we mentioned, anomalies, and turning that analysis into clear next steps. Now, I do have a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Once again, we do love participation, so please light up the chat, questions, comments, feedback, what you want to see as the next topic. We'll take it all into consideration. So please do so and drop your comments in the chat, as well as, of course, primarily your questions that you might have as they pop up. We'll also be recording today's session, so you'll be getting a copy shortly after. So just follow along as Kenton walks through today's examples, and you'll have the recordings to do it yourself. So with that, I will turn it over to Kenton. Kenton, the show is all yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Rolando. And appreciate everybody for joining today. Like we've had for a couple of sessions recently, if you've been joining some of our more recent webinars, going to kind of have this as more of a live hands-on workshop together. So I'll be personally using Claude, but you can definitely follow along with tools like ChatGPT as well. So would encourage you to pull up your apps if you have them downloaded and see if you can try to follow along with some of what I'm doing here. I'll be sharing some files. And again, like Rolando mentioned, this session will be recorded. So if you're not able to follow along live, this will be shared as a follow-up for you to reference back to in the future as well. Also, like Rolando mentioned, we'll be having dedicated time for Q&A at the end. So throw your questions in the chat as we move along. Probably answer some of them as we go, but we'll definitely get to all of them at the end before we jump off today. All right. So if you've joined some of our more recent webinars, we've talked a lot about like how can we use AI tools like Claude to help us build things like building decks and building dashboards and setting up workflows. But I want to start getting into the other side of that, right? That's really focused on how do I save time on things I'm already doing? But there's a second angle that we can start to use these AI tools after they've connected into our Amazon data. And that's driving deeper levels of analysis, which probably helps us save time to an extent, but also helps us uncover new insights that may have been more difficult for us to see before. So I'll be walking through a couple of examples of what are some questions we could ask. I would say that those questions are very general, and there's lots more questions we could ask. So definitely feel free to throw other ideas in the chat, and we can talk through how those would work. And I will be using Intentwise AI Gateway today, which is Intentwise's MCP solution, connecting all of your Amazon data across Amazon Ads, Seller, and Vendor Central into tools like Claude or ChatGPT. But if you have other MCP solutions that are doing similar things, you'll definitely still be able to follow along and get value out of today's session as well. All right. Just a few setup slides here before we jump into the actual platform. What we're going to cover over the next hour is how do we set up our Claude session in the best way to help us perform this analysis. Then we're going to run through some example prompts that can help us with ads diagnosis is really what we're going to focus on today. But you could definitely use a lot of these same workflows for seller or vendor central questions that you might be asking. Turning this into more of an agent function that's running automatically for us. And then again, we'll take some time at the end for Q&A. So if we think about analysis that we're doing on a weekly basis and how we can start to reduce that, right? If I wanted to do an in-depth analysis of my ads portfolio, today I'm probably coming in and exporting campaign level data. I'm getting my keyword or search term level data, maybe my product level data. I'm putting that all into probably I know when I've worked with this data in the past, I had really big Excel files, and I'd put that all into those Excel files and bring them into my pivot tables, and that in itself was a time-intensive task. Then I had to cross-reference things and find where are things changing, what's the cause of those changes, and that might go down to the placement level or be an inventory issue. And so that analysis definitely took time in itself. And then writing up all of those findings was kind of the last step there, and that was a pretty time-intensive process every week. Whether you're at a brand or an agency, I think that same flow applies, especially on the agency side, where you're probably doing that across a multitude of accounts every single week. With AI tools like Claude, when they're connected into our data, these things get a lot simpler. I can just ask any natural language question of my data, so I don't have to compile a specific pivot table to answer one question. I can set things up on automated workflows. I can ask follow-up questions without having to do additional data compilation. So those are some of the things that we'll walk through today on how we can move from point A to point B here. So as we think about setting things up, I think a big thing that's important to keep in mind before we start asking these questions is giving AI tools context. By default, I'm sure you all have probably used AI tools to an extent. They're very generic, right? They're built to help everybody and answer any question. So they're very generic by default. And so because of that, you're going to get generic insights into what the causes of changes in your performance might be. So to help with this, we want to give Claude some specific context, or any AI tool for that matter, some specific context to your brand to help it better answer questions as it pertains to your specific situation. Some examples of that could be like what your company's position is in the market, your goals or targets for your budget or your spend, your ACoS targets. What are some recent changes in your account? Have you had a recent product launch? Or do you have any seasonality trends? Where are you in the competitive landscape? Right? Those are all pieces of context that we can give to help AI tools better understand and diagnose specifically as it pertains to your account. All right, so we're going to jump over to the console in just a second and start setting that up. I just want to flash a few of the analysis prompts that we'll walk through today. So we'll be looking through things like, why is ACoS changing? Are there places where I'm running out of budget? Are there places where I need to change my bids? Is there places I have opportunity to scale? Just a couple examples of what we'll walk through today. But again, if you're answering other questions today, those are totally ones that you could work to answer as well, but that are more specific to your brand's context. All right, so I'm going to switch over my screen share here. And jump into Claude. Again, if you have an AI tool downloaded, you can definitely follow along, or we'll share the recording for you to follow along at a future point as well. So the first thing we need to set up is that context piece of things. So to start that, I think the easiest way to give consistent context without us having to come in and give new context every time we have a new chat is to work on a project. So I'm going to start a new project here, and we're going to call this Amazon Ads Analysis. All right. You can give a goal here. I don't think that's necessary with the context we'll be giving it. And so I'm just going to leave this blank for now and click Create Project. Then I'm going to want to give it my context, like we mentioned. So I actually pre-wrote this as an example for today, but some things that I'm going to give it here in a file I'm going to upload. And I just wrote a markdown file here, which you could use Claude to help you write, right? You could point out the things you want to tell it and have it turn that into a markdown file. So the things I'm telling Claude are, a little bit about my company, what my target performance is, some key ASINs and campaigns, areas I know I have issue, like campaigns that I know are always above target ACoS, my best search terms, my seasonality trends, and then my place in the competitive landscape. And I am actually, if you're following along, if you go to that apps section in the bottom part of your screen, like right under the chat, if you click apps and then handouts, you should actually see now a Wiser Drones brand context. Wiser Drones is the brand that I'm working with today. That's where Intentwise demo data is connected. You can go ahead and download that link there, and you could upload that markdown file either to your Claude, or you could use it as an example to reformulate that into your brand specific context as well. All right, so I'm going to take that file, just upload from my device, and right here is that brand context. And I can click into this to kind of show you guys what I have here. So I have an overview of my company. I gave it my annual spend and revenue targets, my target performance across a couple of different key areas, key ASINs and campaigns, some known issues, seasonality trends, and my competitive context. And then I gave it some information on how to use this file. All right. Next, I just want to tell it how it's going to consume its data within this project. So again, one last thing that I have to prompt every time I come into the chat. So I'm just going to say, use Intentwise MCP to get your data. Use the organization AI gateway and use the account MCP vendor. Brandon asked, what did I build that context report using? Yeah, so that's something you could definitely just do in a Claude session itself using, I used Claude Code to build that. You could use Claude Cowork as well. I just described a couple key points that I wanted to include. I kind of typed out some of those context pieces. I asked it to recommend other pieces of context that I could give it the information for to add. And then it took all that chat history that I had and compiled that into a markdown file, which I was able to then come through and make targeted edits to as well. So that's the process that I would recommend walking through. Another question, would Claude have to already be connected to Intentwise AI Gateway beforehand for this to work? In this example, yes, it would need to have some access to your data already. You could definitely come in and bring in and upload your CSV files in this file section, but it is going to have probably a little bit more difficulty when it comes to compiling all of those things. And then it's not going to be something that you could set up automatically. So I'd recommend some type of MCP connection to your data, whether that's Intentwise or other MCP connectors, depending on your goals there. The one thing I would call out when you're working with these context files is I would always get them in this .md format or a markdown format. That any other file format is going to use a lot more tokens. So this is the file format that Claude and other AI tools are designed to work the best with or use the less tokens against. It's kind of its native language. So converting any files that you might have to a markdown when you're going to be using them on a recurring basis will be the best way to conserve tokens efficiently. And again, you can always ask Claude itself to make some of those changes for you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and ask our first analysis question here now, and I'll paste this in the chat as well. So the first question I'm going to ask is, I noticed that my ACOS jumped in the last 14 days. Which campaigns drove that change, and what shifted? Right? Is it my bids? Is it new keywords, or is there external things changing? And I'll throw this in the chat as well for you guys to access. And so let's go ahead and run that question. And I noticed a few people mentioning some issues with accessing the session. Definitely, I think Rolando put some notes in there. You can try closing all of the tabs here. And if you unfortunately can't get it figured out, I will definitely be sharing the recording after for your reference as well. All right, so you can see Claude here is using Intentwise to pull campaign level data. And now it's pulling search term level data to focus on what's shifting across some of the known problem areas that I gave it in my context file. Nathan, correct. Yeah, I wouldn't say rules, but more context of my brand. So it wasn't necessarily, here's how you do analysis. It was more, here's some information on my brand to help you do the analysis. So we gave it like brand information and our targets, target ACOS, our seasonality trends, some things like that. You can actually see that file yourself. And if you click apps and handouts, that file is available for you to download as well. And apologies for this. We're gonna run this one more time here. And it's using another tool that I have connected. This is why we give it some good instructions. So I'm just gonna tell it, don't build any dashboards or use other MCPs. All right, let's update those instructions there, and then we'll try this one more time. I've got a question. How do we connect to Intentwise Gateway? Won't be something that I'll walk through live today, but we will share instructions for that towards the end of the session. I think there is a link. If you click in that link section below the chat, there's a link that'll take you to the page to sign up. We'll also be sharing more information on how you can get signed up towards the end of the session today. All right, so it looks like it's got this data again. It's got its campaign level data, and it's pulling those search term level data to see what's driving the conversion change. All right, it looks like it's going to pull from another account, just this being sandbox data. Nathan, so no, I'm using, Nathan asked if I'm uploading a search term report or campaign report from Seller Central to Claude. I'm actually using Intentwise AI Gateway, which is our MCP tool, which has all of this data sitting behind an MCP that connects into Claude. So Claude can live query that data without me having to upload any CSV files, which is available for anybody to use. Again, we'll share instructions in a little bit on how to sign up for that. But you can also definitely use this by uploading files. Definitely a couple more manual steps still, and it's not something that you'll be able to set up to run automatically, which we'll touch on how to do later. But it's definitely still an option. You could upload those files the same place we uploaded that context file as well. All right, so let's see what happened here. It looks like over the last 14 days, our account actually improved in performance. Spend dropped 30%. And revenue dropped 26%, but that means my overall net ACOS changed or improved. And here's the ones that were hurting my performance. Looks like I found 3 campaigns that hurt performance. It looks like clicks were dropping here, but orders collapsed even more. Right. And then it looks like it found some common patterns across those. So it looks like it's seeing, based off my brand context, that DGI is increasing their share of voice, and that's bringing down, increasing my bid pressure year over year. So that's causing me to have to bid more, and it's bringing down my conversion rate because of my competitiveness against DGI. There's new search terms that are entering my auto and broad campaigns. All right, so I'm seeing impression volume jump on new search terms, and my orders are flat or down. And I'm seeing budget and bid changes mid-period, so my spend dropped, but my ACOS is still worsening, even though I changed my budgets down during the period. It gives me some recommended next steps. So it's asking me to pull a search term report for a certain campaign, check on this listing, pause or turn off my sponsored display retargeting. So it's giving me a couple next steps here for this exact question. If I wanted to, I could ask it to dive into some of these things a little bit further, as long as it has access to that data. All right, so that's one example, right? We can start to have Claude help us with, why is my ACOS changing? Let's pick another example here. Maybe we want to find places where we have opportunities to scale. So I'm going to ask it, which campaigns have hit their daily budget at least 3 days last week while keeping an ACOS below 25%. I'll throw this one in the chat as well. All right, so it looks like it's querying that data now. And again, while this is pretty focused on ads, this is all definitely possible across Seller or Vendor Central too, if you wanted to do analysis of total sales or inventory or buy box. As long as that data is available to your AI session, it could do a lot of the same analysis there as well. Correct. Yeah. So my Claude is connected to Intentwise. We're not uploading any files here. This is something that is available to everybody. We'll share instructions on how you could get connected there as well towards the end. But yes, you could also definitely upload reports or files, but those are going to add a lot more manual steps. And I'm about to show you how you can set this up automatically. And that would obviously not be possible if you're having to upload files as well. Brandon asked, can you connect Seller or Vendor Central data to Claude as well? Not natively, right? Seller Central doesn't necessarily have that connection. That is some data that's a part of Intentwise AI Gateway. So if I came in here and asked a question, or if you were somebody who has access to Intentwise AI Gateway, which again is something that's available for everybody to sign up for, then yes, you could connect your Seller or Vendor Central data directly to Claude. Or there's other MCPs out there that could help you get a similar result. MCP servers is what I would look into to establish that connection. There's nothing native in Seller Central that would make that connection, at least at this point in time. So I'd say in general, when you're thinking about how do I get data into Claude or ChatGPT, MCPs are the way to go. Think about MCPs as like an API for AI tools. So that's how they can connect to your live databases across ads or Seller and Vendor Central. All right, so it looks like it's running that last query here for this question.
While that loads, I'm going to, I know we're getting several questions on AI Gateway, so I'm just going to post a quick link to our AI Gateway page. So we pop this up here.
Yeah, so Orlando's popping that link up. So if you've been asking, how do I connect to AI Gateway, or can I try AI Gateway? That's the best place to get signed up. AI Gateway is available to anybody. We're actually offering a 2-week free trial for anybody to sign up for right now. So just a form on that page that you can fill out, and then it's not a wait list or anything. It's open to anybody. By the end of the day, someone from our team will reach out to you on steps to get set up. So you can fill that form out, and we can help you get set up and connected. All right. So it looks like we were looking for places that we hit our daily budget cap in the last 3 days in the last week, but ACOS was below 25%. And it looks like it found 4 campaigns that met that criteria. This one has a 7% ACOS, right? And it's recommending I could increase my budget by 50 to 100%. This one has a $50 daily budget, and it's converting at a 20%. So it's definitely an opportunity it's at an 8%. So it has an opportunity to scale. This one's got a $44 daily budget, and which is below my 28% target for sponsored brands. So it's actually, I didn't tell it this, if you remember back in my question, that my target for sponsored brands is 28%. That's something I gave it in my context file. It's recalling back to that to see if this is performing well or not. And then here's another one that has a $9 daily budget cap. And it's performing under my 22% target. So these 4 it's recommending are opportunities for me to scale based off the last week's performance. and so I can bring in some more budget here. Question from Tim: how is Intentwise MCP different than the native Amazon Ads MCP? It's a great question. I think the biggest difference is you're going to see that we also bring in seller and vendor central data all in one place. So that would be something that the Ads MCP from Amazon directly is only going to be advertising data. You're also going to see differences in like the connection of data, right? So if you wanted to connect what's my inventory to what's my ad spend, or what's my total vendor sales or seller sales to my ad spend, those are going to be things that are gaps in the Amazon MCP as well. So that's probably the highest level thing. There's a couple others that we could go into, but I think that's going to be the biggest key difference. All right, so now we've walked through a couple examples of how this can help with our week-to-week analysis. I want to think about how we can set this up to happen automatically, right? Right now, I'm still coming in and spending time and asking all these questions and waiting for it to load, and that's not necessarily the best way for me to have this analysis delivered for me. So I'm actually going to jump over to Claude Cowork here and set up a new project again. So I'm going to come in here and say new project. I'm going to start from scratch. And we're going to call this weekly ads analysis. I'm going to give it my context file again. All right. And then I'm going to actually give it this agent prompt file, which I will be activating in that same handout section as before as well, which is going to tell this agent how I want it to do the weekly analysis. And then I'm just going to give it the same instructions as before. Use the Intentwise MCP for data. Use organization gateway, and this would be your own organization potentially. Use account demo vendor. All right, I'm going to click create. And when I jump in this project, you're going to notice a couple of things that are different here. Right? So one, we have this idea of memory here. Right? So as these sessions run now, it's going to be able to collect data from or reference its past findings and results as well to see if there's trends happening over time as it does this analysis. Recall what its past insights were as well. So it's able to kind of start to learn from itself. And we also have this concept of scheduled tasks. So we'll be able to start setting up scheduled performances as well. I did want to show this agent prompt so you can guys get an idea of what's in here. So here's the agent prompt, right? So I'm telling it you are the Wiser Jones weekly performance agent and giving it the checks to run. So it's looking for anomalies in ACOS. So it's comparing the last 7 days ACOS to the prior 7 days and finding places where there's major changes. It's finding places where campaigns are hitting their daily budget, but they're performing well. It's going to find me keyword harvesting opportunities. Find search terms with more than 3 orders and ACOS below 25%. Find me places where there's big changes in revenue. So if there's a revenue decline, find me keywords that are have major changes in CPC, and find me campaigns that are above a 15% conversion rate and with a total spend under $500. These are places that I might be under investing. So scale opportunities. Right. So these are a couple examples. There's definitely more you could work in here, right? But you could use this format to give it additional examples. I'm also telling it how I want the output, right? So I'm going to say I want to have this as a 1 line per each check. So just tell me did I pass the check or is there a flag, and give me a reason, right? And then give me my top 3 recommended actions ranked by the estimated impact of changing them. Just telling it to keep the output below 800 words so it's easy for me to digest it. All right, so I'm going to so I'll exit out of this. Yeah, that agent prompt, again, if you click that apps section at the bottom of your screen here and you click handouts, you'll see both the context file we used and the agent prompt we used are available for you to download there. Unfortunately, that's too long for me to share in the chat, but you can download both of these markdown files here, which is the best way to upload that format into Cowork anyway. Is there any skills involved in these Cowork prompts? No, not in this. Skills are definitely a great way to work with AI tools, but no skills are being used here. All right, so I'm just going to tell it, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set this up to run on a schedule. And I see other questions have come through. I will definitely get to all of those questions before we end today. So I'm just going to name this my weekly ad analysis. This is my weekly automated performance analysis. Right, and it's just going to say check the agent prompt and context file. Use the Slack MCP to deliver findings and also keep findings in Claude history. Save key results to memory and reference past memories to find trends. All right, and make sure we're just working in this project. I'm going to set this up to run weekly. And let's say I'm going to have it run at 9 a.m. on Mondays. The key thing I'd call out here, your computer has to be on when this runs. If you have a computer that you have a laptop like I do, and you're turning that off at times, I just turn this on, have this run at a time that you know you're usually online every week. All right, so I'll have this save. And then I always recommend testing this connection. So I'm going to click into this and say run now. So I'm going to test this run here. And I can just click view to view the run happening like any other Claude chat. While this is running, I can maybe touch on a few questions. Nathan asked, are you making this prompt in Cowork? Absolutely. I definitely would recommend using Claude, either Cowork or Code, to help with these prompts. It's not going to write it end for you. You definitely need to give it a baseline. Here's the thing, I told it the checks I wanted it to look for and gave it some context on my brand. It helped flesh it out for me. And then I came back and made targeted edits. That's usually the workflow I would work through. But yeah, these Claude tools or any AI tools are pretty knowledgeable in how the best ways for prompting. Brandon asked, did you incorporate tacos in here too? I can imagine that being a big benefit in streamlining with the MCP. Yeah, so not necessarily in any of the prompts I have here, but Intentwise MCP definitely calculates tacos. So that's a question that you could certainly ask if you were connected. I see a question about security, especially in Europe. I will come back to that question at the end. I know that's a big question when we're working with AI tools, and I want to make sure I give that a little bit more time to answer. All right, so it looks like it's just asking this permission to run this query. I'm just going to say allow for all scheduled runs. It's another reason that I like to run these prompts before I have them run on a workflow, just so I can give it any approvals that it needs. So it's pulling all of that ad performance from my prompt here. While this is running, I'm going to throw this link in the chat here. If you didn't get a chance to click that link that Rolando popped up before, I'm throwing a link in the chat here. That's our page for AI Gateway. If you want to test out any of these connections yourself, again, we're offering a 2-week free trial at the moment. So you can use the Intentwise MCP or any other MCPs and do a similar analysis, whether it's for Amazon data or any other type of data sets. A lot of these same workflows or best practices will still apply there. But if you want to try out Intentwise AI Gateway, again, just fill out that form on that page. Not a waitlist or anything. Someone from our team will reach out to you before the end of the day today on next steps to get you connected and set up. All right, so it looks like it had its findings and it's asking me to send a message in Slack. I'm just going to go ahead and approve that. Again, Slack connection is optional. You could definitely just have this live in Claude. You could have it send it as an email, whatever you'd prefer to have there. Slack is my preferred way of having these messages sent. And Slack has an MCP connection as well, but that's just completely up to what's your preferred method of receiving these results would be. All right, so it looks like it finished its analysis. The key headline, ad spend rose 51%. but ad sales grew faster, so my overall lead cost improved. It flagged one campaign, right? And let's see if it can open that Slack message. Give me 1 second here, and I will share my screen so you guys can see those findings here. All right. All right, so here's those findings here. You can see it gave a weekly analysis. Overall, the headline is strong, efficient scaling. Here's the difference in my metrics this week. Here's how they changed week over week. It gave me 3 wins. Here's 3 campaigns that saw improvements and 3 recommendations. This campaign is wasting spend. It's recommending I pull back on my bids and budgets. This campaign is still very efficient, but it's down. It's seeing spend down sharply. And one campaign that's my biggest spender saw a ROAS slip. It's still in a healthy place, but something that I might want to keep an eye on. Right. So yeah, I could definitely have something more detailed delivered to me. I told Claude specifically to keep it under 800 words and not and deliver only the most key things. But if you wanted a more detailed response or more information brought in there, you certainly could as well. I can also come in here and tell Claude, can you share the full analysis output here longer than what you shared in Slack? If I wanted to come ask follow-up questions, right? I would also show you that if you see that memory section we talked about before, it kept all that analysis in its memory. So now I can look at that again next week and start to say, okay, am I noticing any trends in performance that are happening over time here? All right, so here's a full write-up of what's happening. Right, here's all the different metrics that it looked at on an account level. Here's what those numbers are telling us. It gives me a campaign by campaign level detail. Some wins here, some chances to what things to watch out for. And again, this can all be customized to what exactly matters in your account. All right. So I'm going to pause there and jump over and answer some questions. Again, this is all just an example of what a workflow could look like here. Some best practices I keep in mind as you set this up for yourself. One, make sure you give it context. That brand context file that I shared, I think, is a good example, but you need to obviously adjust that for your own brand and add other things that might be important. You can totally use tools like Claude Code to help you build those, and I'd recommend using them as a markdown file. I'd recommend working in projects so that you don't have that give that context on every single chat. The best way to get your data is through an MCP connection. Doesn't have to be Intentwise. Obviously, we're partial to thinking that the data delivery from Intentwise is the best, but there's obviously other MCP connections out there for either Amazon data or other data sets that you might be working with as well. If maybe you're selling on Shopify or things like that, there might be other places you can gather your data there too. And then writing up an agent prompt and setting things up on a recurring schedule is the best way to automate all of this so that you don't have to spend the time to come in and ask all these questions. I think that's when people start to get the best value, is when they set things up on a schedule. So you're not coming in and doing all of this and still having that manual time to work. All right. Got a couple questions from Nathan here. If I'm not connected to an MCP, you would create your prompt in Cowork with all your guidelines and rules on how to analyze sales. And then I would upload data from Vendor Central. Yeah, so it'd be really tough for you to set this up as a recurring schedule in any Claude tool if you're having to bring in manual files. What I would recommend doing in that case is still setting up a project with the context, right? And then every time you're ready to run that, go download all your files, maybe give Claude a context file on how to read the data that you're going to upload. And then when you come in and start a new chat, you can just come to that project instead of setting it up on a schedule. Just once a week when you're ready to do your analysis, come to that project, give it the data and say, go work through the agent prompt with this data. And it can, work through those same steps. It could still have the agent prompt. It could still have the context. Just wouldn't be automatic. You'd have that step of uploading the data and having it manually run. I'm going to ask, do we have any other connectors besides Amazon? Intentwise does offer data for Meta, Google, and Walmart, as well as TikTok and Shopify. Those are not currently a part of Intentwise AI Gateway. Right now, we're very focused on building out our Amazon data set, but those will be things that throughout the rest of the year, you'll see from us expanding into some of those other platforms that you mentioned as well, specifically as it pertains to Intentwise AI Gateway. Any other questions? Someone asked, I just been connected to Intentwise AI Gateway. Can I? Yep, you can just refer to any of your accounts by name and ask questions about it. Exactly. Yep, you can just say, hey, I want to ask about this account. There should, as long as you've set up that connection, there should be, you should be good to go to start asking questions. Project. So a project is just a function of a tool like Claude Cowork. So a project is just going to be something that has consistent context. If I use Cowork without a project, I would be coming in and giving those context files and that agent prompt every time I wanted to run things. It's not going to learn from itself, right? It's not going to store memories of the things that it's seeing in your account. A project is actually still in Claude Cowork or even a Claude Chat. The difference is I can upload those context files one time, and I can use that project and it'll reference that every single time. And then as it runs this analysis, it can save things to a project-specific memory. So a memory specific to that analysis, it can reference back to that as it does future analysis as well. So think about it as like a contained environment for Claude Cowork, right? It doesn't have access to all the other things you might be doing in Claude as well. Someone asked, what's the main benefit of using Intentwise AI Gateway? I would say I'll approach this compared to maybe manual data uploads. I think one, there's obviously the time that you'd still have in manually compiling that data. And two, Intentwise does a lot of work in making sure that the data is stitched together correctly. Your Seller Central data and your ads data live in very different places, right? Especially if you want to expand to the full scope of things. Like if I want inventory and finance data, and on my ads, I want campaigns and keywords and search terms and products. Stitching that all together is not an easy task. And from our experience, Claude's going to struggle with that natively. If you just come in and give it all those CSV files, it's not going to know how to stitch that all together to say these keywords are in these campaigns, and these products on ads, or these products inventory on Seller Central. Stitching that all together is not easy, and that's one, pretty difficult for Claude to do. And two, when you come in and upload all of that data, it's going to take a lot of Claude's context, right? It's going to have access to everything versus if you use an MCP connection, it's only sending the data that it needs to answer the question that you ask. And so that's going to mean that your context window is going to be larger. It's going to bring you're going to spend more tokens to answer the same question. And your questions will probably be answered a little bit slower as well because it's got to read through all of those different data sets. Hopefully that answers your question there. But Mika, if you questions about your specific account, if you could actually maybe email us or open us support ticket, we can help better identify things specifically for your account. The question about security, yeah. So that's a great question. Security is definitely important to think about when we're using AI tools. I'd say there's two sides of that. One, there is if you're using an MCP connection, security behind that MCP. So I can touch on Intentwise for an example, the things I would look at. So behind our MCP, Intentwise uses our data infrastructure that we use for several other products, which is fully SOC 2 and GDPR compliant. So just make sure you're looking for places where data infrastructure still meets both of those standards. And then anytime an LLM is called or we use data in an LLM behind the MCP or an AI tool behind the MCP, we run it in what's called a contained environment. So there's tools like AWS Bedrock or Microsoft Azure that allow these models to run in an isolated server. So they're running in a server that doesn't have access to the broader servers that Anthropic or OpenAI might offer. And so that data is never actually being sent to Anthropic. It's running on a AWS or a Microsoft server, that version of the model. And so there's no risk of your data leaking back to one of these model providers and being retrained on. In terms of you pulling data into your AI account, whether that's a manual upload or you're using an MCP even, I would make sure that you have an agreement with, you're on a plan that prevents these companies from retraining on your data. Usually that means you need to be, for Claude, on a Teams or enterprise plan. That is still going to allow for data retention. So if zero data retention is important for you, you'd likely need to be on an enterprise plan, and they do offer zero data retention agreements. Or you can run these models within AWS Bedrock yourself and have a lot of the same capabilities. But the biggest thing I would look for is no retraining. If you're on like a pro account with those $20 pro accounts, your data can still be retrained on. So I wouldn't recommend pulling data in there. I'd make sure you're on a Teams or an enterprise account, or I know another account that has that no retraining agreement as a part of it at a minimum. All right. Well, we can wrap up there if there's no other questions. Again, if you want to get connected to Intentwise AI Gateway to try out some of the things we did today, you can take advantage of that 2-week free trial with that link we posted before. And this recording will be shared out for you to come back and check too. Those files will be available when you watch the recording as well, if you want to reference back to them as well.
Do want to make mention of next week's webinar. As you all know, and if you've been tuning in, we run webinars weekly when possible. So far, we have been running webinars weekly. Next week, we're going to continue the AI conversation with Jerry Vida from Peak ROAS. So that session will focus on the new Amazon path to purchase for AI shopping. So this includes how brands can build relevance for intent-based discovery, optimize listings for Alexa shopping assistant, and use SQP, brand analytics, and other data to map to the path to purchase. So you don't want to miss that. I do have it on our links. So if you just share it, so you can go in and register there. And
I would say if you go to that link, there's a button you can click there to sign up for the webinar series. You can join these, and we'll send you the webinar links every week. And I would encourage you to sign up on that so you don't miss any future ones as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We do have one last poll before we call it a day. Feel free to submit your answers there. And let's see, I think there might have been another question that came in. No, actually, everybody's just thanking you, Kenton.
If you guys do have questions that come up, please feel free to message us. You can find me on LinkedIn, or I will throw my email in the chat here as well. Please feel free to reach out at any time if you have questions after today's session as well.
Awesome. I think that's it for the questions. So that's a wrap for today. We thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you again next week.
Have a great day, everyone.
Everybody.